ask our audience to please be patient while I get everything started for the webinar. There we go. Oh. Okay, please hold on for technical difficulties. We're getting this live streaming started. All right. Thank you for your patience. And welcome to our Career Masterclass, How Top Professionals Thrive Through the Pandemic. Our guest today is Vani Kola, who is the Managing Director of Kalaari Capital. We'll hear more about her in a moment. We have a couple of tips on the controls for Webex. Please put your questions into the Q&A box. That way we can queue them up for Vani. And I don't want you to look at my very large face here. So fix that. And you can chat through the chat function, but please, again, put the questions in the Q&A box so that we can keep track of those. We're going to be doing a couple of polls today, one at the beginning, one at the end. And this first one is about your level of experience to give Vani a feel for who's in the audience today. So if you are in the live Webex event, you'll see the widget. Please answer the poll. And a second question about how you're doing today, checking in with people during the pandemic. Make sure everybody's doing okay. And if you are not live, if you're watching on streaming, you can put your answers in the comments for your streaming service. About 15 seconds. And this is an interesting distribution. We'll close the poll in about 5 seconds. And as you can see, it's a trimodal distribution with a large number of people who are experienced with more than 10 years, some early career people in the 3 to 5 years, and a number of people who are still at college or university. So it's a good distribution. And with that, I'm going to introduce Vani, who is the managing director of Kalaari Capital. She spent 22 years as a successful entrepreneur in Silicon Valley before building this firm, and now works with entrepreneurs and looks for young first-time entrepreneurs who she can mentor and help to scale up to succeed on a global scale. She's also actively involved in organizations that foster both entrepreneurship and women leadership, and we're very pleased and lucky to have her here today. So welcome, Vani, and I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself more fully.
Well, as Stuart said, my name is Vani Kola. I'm Managing Director at Kalaari Capital. Kalaari is an early stage venture capital firm based out of Bangalore. We invest in technology companies primarily focused on the India opportunity. I, of course, grew up in India, did my engineering in India, but subsequently went to United States for my master's and then worked there for many years. Fortunately, having sort of discovered the energy of startups, most of my career was built around being with young companies and growing them. I think of myself today, even fundamentally, as an engineer and a product manager. So, when we are looking for investment opportunities, we are looking for interesting product ideas and looking for product led founders. I think in the last decade, we have invested in over 100 companies, and generally, most of them are clutter breaking, new emerging themes. If you are in India, you'll be familiar with many of the names of the companies that we have invested in. But I'll pause there so we can talk more interactively.
Okay. So what induced you to go from engineering, product management, and into venture capital? How was that transition?
Well, I mean, the product management really led me to be an entrepreneur. I started my own companies in the valley, and build them up. Eventually, both companies got sold, and I think there are many ways to approach entrepreneurship, but sometimes you have a problem for which you feel you know how to build a solution. And that's really where the product led thinking comes into play. As I did that, seeking opportunities where you could build disruptive products, that same thing led to venture capital because, in a way, venture capital is not that different. Venture capital is also about looking for disruptive products. And so trying to do that in a larger scale versus building one company at a time and funding other founders versus who are doing that and doing that well versus me personally being able to do so. It's just multiplying the impact factor.
Yeah, and Kalaari, of course, has done that amazingly well. So we encountered the pandemic in the early part of 2020, and it's kind of what people call a black swan event. It's something that you never planned for particularly well because you never even anticipate that it's going to happen. Um, so what was it like for Kalaari and for your portfolio companies and for you personally when this event came out of the blue?
So, like with any black swan event, I think your ability to make quick decisions could help you thrive or at least survive, if not thrive. And I think the pandemic, the question really was we focused with each portfolio founder on how do we create longevity, how do we ensure we protect our employees' well-being, which is financial, emotional well-being, and how do we go about planning for business continuity. And I think the principles of that are really apply uh, at a personal level, can apply at a professional level, applies at a company level. The basic principles really don't change that much. So we focused on how much cash do we have, what are critical projects, what are non-critical projects, what are projects that could be transformative for the company in leveraging this crisis as an opportunity. After all, companies have thrived where they see opportunity in a crisis. And but more importantly, on planning for how long would business be down before it gets back to normal.
Uh-huh.
And I think we did intense planning, restructuring exercises with all our founders at the beginning of the pandemic. Of course, it's a different question that no one understood how long this would last. So, in order to make any survival plan, if you're lost in a desert, you have to estimate when do you think you are likely to be rescued.
Yeah.
And if the answer is never, then you might as well give up now. But if you think you're going to be rescued in a day or 5 days or a month, your planning changes, right? So
Yeah.
that's a different question. Whether any of us understood and planned for how long this has lasted, but the thought process at the start of 2020 was to help each company, uh, you, you know, uh, think about their business opportunity, but also think about the sort of friction in their business today because of this new variable called pandemic.
Okay. And did you have instances of companies in your portfolio where the business model was so radically changed by the pandemic? For example, if you had something that was based on, a lot of face-to-face contact and people had to pivot to non-contact or remote types of operations, was that a big challenge for your portfolio companies and your entrepreneurs?
I think because we invest in a wide variety of sectors, we'd have to take company by company or at least
Hmm.
industries and see how they were affected. And obviously, companies in EdTech thrived because more people were going online and willing to pay for that. Companies that had significant retail operations struggled a lot. We have a company called QFit that operates a set of gyms that are fairly popular called Cult. And obviously, that's a high touch, high contact uh, activity. And even today hasn't fully recovered. Those companies had to really do hard digital pivots, as well as, like I said, plan for their financial well-being very differently from sustainability. So I think it depends from industry to industry. Companies that were already sort of digitally attuned or were doing, products that increased for example, our companies in gaming did very well because people have downtime, and that's a different form of entertainment, and when all other things are not there. So those kind of companies did well. But companies that were operating, for example, we had a company that was operating student housing, and they didn't do well. So I think it depends on different companies and their business models.
Yeah, I mean, student housing would be a classic example of a company whose business model simply gets wiped out by the pandemic, and you'd have to pivot to something radically different to keep that enterprise going. Um, Here in California, as you mentioned when you talked about your portfolio company that operates gyms, um, the lockdown rules have changed up and down uh, drastically over the last 2 years, and some gym owners have been able to adapt, and others have shut down entirely. So it's interesting to see how different companies in different sectors are able to adapt to the pandemic. And as you said, companies in the digital domain, some of them are thriving because of the pandemic, because people have more time to be online. Um, which brings to another question: how have your operations at Kalaari and then the operations of your portfolio companies, how have those internal operations changed in terms of where people work, how people work, how you interact and manage people with and manage people, um, due to the pattern of lockdowns and remote work?
Um, I think many of our investee sectors have been able to manage lockdown and remote work much better. There are two categories, I think, to think about when we talk about, being able to work from home. One, of course, is how easy it is in the kind of industry you are in. And the more you are in a product business and a D2C business, direct to consumer and digital business, as a business model, you can be obviously more at home. If the gyms reopen and people have to come in, then people do come in. You have retail operations, you are in aviation, there are industries where obviously it's not possible to do very significant digital transformation. But by and large, I think many of the industries that we are involved in, the business model largely permit, I think, being able to serve your customers remotely. And I think those companies also were able to do significant pivots to how do we keep in touch with our customers better, digitally and so forth. And then that's the outward facing part, where your business must be capable of remote client management. The second part is remote management of your employees, which I think some companies do a better job and others not so well. Because when human contact is lost, much of everything becomes transactional. So, have you done this project? Where is this? Where is that? So, the context to know people is lost. And I know that, in the beginning, it's very sort of liberating to be working from home. But after a certain time, when you have to onboard new people, and those new people need to get to know their colleagues, and the only way they know them is just from, very specific topical discussions, be it as it may, Webex or Zoom or whatever it is.
Right.
So, how to be creative about building teams and communities and meaningful interactions, employee well-being. That I think is a reinvention for companies to think through, and I believe that we are just at the early part of that journey overall, all of us in that process. The third, of course, is something, as much as we applaud the work from home, on a very long term basis, not everybody's home setup is convenient or conducive to be able to do that, especially in the urban context, especially in the large family context, to sort of have the mind space to be able to really do that, segregate that kind of space for 8 or 10 hours a day. So I think those are some of the challenges to navigate for companies, and I think the book on that, the last chapter on this is not written, meaning inevitably there is going to be, both employers are figuring out, why are we paying all this real estate, and they,
Yep.
in prime address, and they want employees to work from home, save costs, right? Now, for not all employees, this is actually a welcome uh, you know, uh, option. And so we'll have to find that happy medium between, and the other way is true too. Some employers don't want work from home, and some employees really want work from home. So I think we'll have to navigate this happy medium, as well as really kind of continue to rethink thoughtfully on how do you assess productivity, how do you ensure that you have, as I said, truly supported your employees' well-being when you're not interacting with them in person. So, but I think there is a lot that's happening in the right direction in this, and I think many of our portfolio kind of companies are probably more able to pioneer it because they are, younger, nimblers, and have a more technology adoption orientation to collaboration than I think, larger incumbent kind of companies which had a certain work culture which is hard to readjust or readapt.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and as you were mentioning, the adaptation companies make around real estate, and do we need the premier address and office space? That's not only a challenge for companies, but it's a challenge for cities that have,
Yes.
you know, set up their infrastructure around these, office developments and depend on revenue from them and that type of thing. So the choices that companies make have, wider impacts around the society around them. So how have people in a certain psychological way reacted to the pandemic as um, either a challenge or an opportunity? Do you see that most of your entrepreneurs look at this era of change as this is just opening a different set of doors? Or do you find a number of them who become discouraged that, oh, the world is different from what I expected and I'm not ready to cope?
Massive opportunity. I mean, I think most of the entrepreneurs see this as sort of a golden era, massive opportunity. Everything is getting digitized, every sector, every industry is getting disrupted, and technology is just accelerating in how much it's embedded in everything and anything we do, whether it's from inside our homes, from home automation to our transportation, whether that's public transports or your private transport. Business models are changing from shared models to the form factors are changing. EV as a core driver. So there is just massive changes in every aspect of our life, and with the device proliferation and the screen proliferation, how we teach ourselves. This session, for example, wouldn't have really been possible easily pre-pandemic. And I think so there is
Right.
a certain acceleration that has happened with the pandemic for digital adoption by acceleration of a decade, if not more, in how people have gotten comfortable in doing things, not just transactions, but how you build friendships, how you even maintain family relationships, right? And I think during pandemic, everybody was doing more family calls than they did before, and playing cards, online together with families, or this or that or whatever. So lots of things from our social interactions have fundamentally changed. So and every industry, there isn't an industry you can touch something as traditional as medicine. I mean, I've seen almost every doctor adopting telemedicine in some form. It's supplemental, maybe. Oh, yeah, you came to see me already, but the next one, you don't need to come to see me. We can just video chat or, whatever it is, right? So I think with
Yeah.
this kind of a change that has happened, if we were to look back to this moment, let's say a few years out, every 5 years, if we looked back, we will see how far we have changed, perhaps without fully recognizing it. So I think it's a massive opportunity, not, really a setback.
And, it's interesting because, like you said, when we look back, we see so many examples of things where we might have said to ourselves, I would never do something like that. And then when the pandemic made it impossible to do anything else, we found out we liked it. So,
Mm.
I mean, um, some people would never have worked from home or worked remotely, and then they found out that they personally felt it was a great thing for them. Um,
Yeah.
there's an interesting news report recently about private jet service in the United States and how when the pandemic hit, a lot of wealthy people decided rather than interact with people on commercial airlines, they would charter private jets. But now that lockdowns are easing up, the private jet service is still growing because people have decided, that's convenient, they like it, that type of thing. So these kinds of changes can start with the impetus from some big event and then take root and change our lives completely. So what kinds of new habits have you and your entrepreneurs and your investees put in place that are different under the pandemic and seem to be working well?
Um, I mean, I think first and foremost would be fiscal habits, right? That, how you uh, look at financial management of your company to be much more, hands-on in planning that, reviewing that, being, on top of that. I think that's a big part of a fundamental change. The second really is, being agile and fast paced in decision making, because things are evolving so rapidly. Being able to experiment and fail quickly, to recognize that, and to continue to reinvent more quickly, I think, as a DNA. And then, and to quickly adapt, as I said. And I also think open to learning. There is just so much change. You have to be in a learning and more deeper thinking mindset, also to drive decisions. I think these are, and these can be institutionalized, by the way. These kind of sound, like qualitative things, but I think you can do things where this can be institutionalized as a expectation. And, also think harder on the values that work in your favor to maneuver through these difficult periods. What is it that binds your team together? Why do they want to stay together? And, also, a lot of times corporate values can be just sort of wall hangings. And truly knowing what is the walk the talk, what are you really going to do for people. I think, these are some of the things where this period has taught us the importance of pivoting, facing crisis with calm, and, and also really very clear communication, authentic, honest communication to employees, to partners, to customers, and really knowing that you have to pull together as a team and making that work. I think those are the, sort of habits, old or new, that have allowed companies to be effective.
Um, as you were talking, I was thinking about the distance between us in terms of our distance from the manager to the employee, the distance from one company to another. And it's interesting, isn't it, that in the pandemic, while the physical distance has grown in terms of we can't necessarily be in the same room at the same time, the practical distance has perhaps gotten closer, because here you and I are talking across 12,000 miles of distance and 11 time zones, and um, you can manage investees all over the world. Your investees can hire talent from anywhere. Uh, People in our business at Simplilearn, we have learners who enroll in our programs online from uh, 60 or 70 different countries. So it's a, do you have a thought about that in terms of the way that the world is simultaneously growing more apart because of the physical limits of the pandemic, but it's growing together because of the technologies and habits that we're developing?
Um, there is this saying, you can be alone but not lonely, or you can be together but very lonely. So I think the physical distance, I think it's a mistake to think that we are growing closer just because technology allows us to be able to connect. Okay. It's like, we have all the information thanks to Google at our fingertips. But to think that we are learned just because we have access to information is wrong. In some ways, sometimes I think of the old fashioned, when I first left India and went to US, obviously there was no WhatsApp, but also telephone calls were terribly, international calls were terribly expensive. It was like,
Yeah,
believe it or not, $3 or $4 a minute, right? And as a
right,
student, that was obviously not that affordable. It's sort of like once a month spending 5 minutes on a phone call, and uh, uh, spending $10 or $15 on that. But we used to write letters, and I would really anticipate and wait for letters from home, and then vice versa. And recently in the pandemic, as I was just cleaning out, found some of those, and there was something about it that any amount of here available all the time online WhatsApp messages don't do, because the
right.
thought and the effort is not there. So, and I use this example only to say, just to think that because technology can allow us to be together, that we really are genuinely together, is a mistake. Because I think one of the things that has happened is we are really not present, right? And it's very hard to be present because you have so many distractions. I mean, let's just do a simple poll. How many of you, as you're doing this seminar, have been doing five other things? Maybe, even listening to music, only giving one ear to the conversation here. Or how many times have you checked your WhatsApp message, or whatever. Not that that's wrong. I'm just saying, I mean, this session is, not hard on your uh, uh, sort of uh, engagement. You can be multitasking, and that's probably fine. But I think we do this for very important things, whether it's even when you're talking to your children or partner, or your boss, or your peer somebody. When you need to be present, I think we've almost like lost the capacity to be present, because it's so easy to be having five screens and doing multiple things and feeling productive, but you're not. So I think we have to kind of always continue to think about, and these are things that we have to think at a personal level, we have to think at a uh, corporate level. Let's assume, you are a founder pitching to me, and because we are not making really eye contact, it's also because I can so easily turn off my video and either be present or not, right? And you are still talking. I think there is and it's here and it's real, right? We all know this, and we are all guilty of it. Each one of us have done this, right? So I think, how are you present for things, is an exploration. It's an important topic, which I think we don't necessarily have full answers. Maybe the unfortunate outcome is we are never really present for anything.
Yeah. I mean, there's an element of that, and even, well before pandemic or technology or any of the things that you've mentioned, there is the notion of learning to be an active listener, and pointing out the human tendency of thinking about what you're going to say next instead of listening to what the person is telling you. So there's, um, it that kind of need to be present and engaged is very important, and um, that gets to the issue of management style. What types of things have you found effective in terms of promoting that connection and engagement with your employees, with your investees? customers? What would you, what would, am I coming through, by the way?
Are you what?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Yeah. So my question is, what types of things have you personally found effective in terms of managing, or in terms of establishing that connection, that presence and engagement um, when you're interacting with your employees, your investees, your customers?
Well, I mean, first is a personal resolution, right? If I'm going to give you my time, either I tell you I don't have the time to give you, or if I'm going to give you my time, then it must be worth it for you, worth it for me. So making a personal resolution that I will be present. So do lesser number of things, but for the things that you do, be present. Okay, I think that's just a personal goal. I think it's important to uh, establish, especially because we are bombarded by distractions, and I think with any interaction you have to kind of get creative in truly personalizing those interactions. I think it's like this in social media, because we are anonymous, or at least we are not seeing the person in face. I think we are more ruder, we troll more easily, we are more harsher, which would be hard to do if you were looking the person in the eye and doing this face to face, right? So, in the same way, I think it's important to think about how you are going to be present and get the maximum out of your time. And, in each interaction, sometimes if I feel that people are really not present, then to pause and ask whether they want to continue. Now, you don't always have the option of doing that. I understand that it depends on, what the conversation is, which side of the table you're on. But, honestly, I don't think there is like a silver bullet answer to this that says, oh, yeah, I mean, just do this and I found the answer, and it is present. I think that it's a significant problem, and I don't think there is an algorithm or a
Right.
platform that you can find. Although, on a lighter note, there are companies that we have reviewed that want to score your engagement by doing a whole bunch of algorithmic interpretations based on your digital interaction, and how focused your eyes are, how many times you are disengaged, and all kinds of stuff. Now, whether that such technology can of course, technology can be built. It's very easy to figure out whether people are truly engaged or not, and give that a score. But whether that's a sort of invasion of privacy, whether you can install something without my knowledge, and then score it, and then, or if employers do that, or schools do that, where are they impinging on individual rights? Technology is also going to open up a whole host of ethical questions,
Yes.
many of which we haven't even started contemplated thinking, right? If education is digital, then, or online, how are you going to evaluate the students' depth of learning? So I think there are so many questions that we'll only have to discover. I don't think I have answers for everything, but I do think you can personally make certain choices, goals, objectives on how you spend your digital time.
Sure. And as you mentioned, the ethical questions that will open up because of technology. One example is no one would have expected when Facebook started that a way for you to connect with, friends and acquaintances and chat with them would turn into the kind of ethical quagmire that people view it as today in terms of
Yeah.
privacy and data and that type of thing. What I think one question is what the people in the audience can learn from um, your your experience, your investees' experience in dealing with a big black swan event like this. What would you tell people in order, to prepare for the unexpected?
I mean, you know, let's think about when sort of the uh, terrorist attack happened in Mumbai, and the Taj and other places, right? And of course, there's a movie on this, Hotel Mumbai or whatever. What is it that you can do to prepare for a black swan event like that, right? I mean, generally, there is no preparation for it. Yet, some people do better, some organizations do better. And what is that? I think that's really the question. There are certain fundamental things, which is very clear, defined values of who you're not, right? And ability to adapt to completely new situations, because nobody can predict black swan events. That's the point, right? And why
Right,
it's called that. Nobody could have predicted the pandemic. How do you prepare for it? How do you prepare to be locked down inside a house? How do you prepare, for all of us know someone who has died of COVID. How do you prepare for that? How do you, there's so many things that you can't really prepare, but what you can do is develop a nature to be resilient, develop ways in which you push yourself to be out of your comfort zone. And all of these are sort of, like muscle memory, what they say. These are just, again, uh, ability to do it is additive to your ability to manage the unexpected. So, how often do you do something that's not routine or outside of your comfort zone? And if you do that, you're probably less likely to be stressed when something else unexpected happens. So, I think the preparation for it is not like a fire drill,
right.
okay? I think it's really uh, um, about be having a core flexible approach to uh, uh, life. And for example, when we talked earlier around business continuity, we're entrepreneurs who prepared a plan within 1 week, saying, we say, look, let's prepare a business continuity plan, let's review it, let's iterate on it. And there were ones we would chase. It took 2 months, and they just, as they say, deer with headlights on, they're frozen, they can't move, and they can't
Yeah.
somehow comprehend and accept the new reality. So I think in our personal life, in running and as a manager or in running a business, I think the ability to be flexible and sort of comfortable to make rapid decisions and evolve them, change them as needed, but not being frozen. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I wish I could source the quote because I was watching a webinar early in the pandemic and it speaks directly to your point, which is uh, executive from an investment firm was talking about if they had told us we had to all move to work from home, we would have told them, sure, that's a 6-month project and it will cost us $10 million to prepare. When it actually happened, we did it on no budget in 3 days. So the notion is, as you said, you have to be prepared not for a specific event because you can't predict that, but you have to be prepared with the habits and attitudes that allow you to be flexible, allow you to be agile, allow you to be mentally tough during these times of change and stress. Um, do you have any last thoughts for the folks in the audience about where in this post-pandemic era they should be looking at career opportunities, or is that basically, um, or do you have any advice maybe on, as we were just talking, not necessarily specific career areas, but specific ways to look at managing and growing their career?
I always tend to think long term. Where do you want to be in the next 5, 10 years? And then make strategic decisions each step that gets you closer on that path. And, optimize for the long term, not for the short term. So, how would I make that less abstract? uh, let's say you got an offer for a job that paid you, I don't know, 20% more, let's say 50% more, 100% more. And, but you went to a place where your learning is less limited, your growth is less limited. I think that in the long run, if you think of it from a decade or whatever, it might not actually be the smartest thing to do. So I think it's important to be in environments of high opportunity and high learning where you're challenged, you're pushed to be outside of your comfort zone that we were
Yeah.
talking about. So I think it's important to keep learning and growing. It's important to kind of have goals and dreams and be persistent in getting there, and also know that like with anything, it's inevitable that there will be a moment where you are lost, where it feels not possible, and you need anchors at that time to recognize that that's not the ultimate answer. Success is a journey, and journeys have sort of sometimes stopovers. Okay.
Hmm.
So I think it's important to really be uh, a positive person, and have self-belief. And I think those things are two big qualities that can, help you sort of actually do better than you thought you might do. I think we all have a tendency to underestimate what we really are capable of doing. You know,
Yeah.
I honestly think if it's more people are underestimate themselves than be overconfident about themselves. So, my suggestion is to live a full life, to uh, whatever you do, to feel purposeful about it and work on things that you really feel passionate about. And I
Excellent.
think if you do those things, you'll be a happier, healthier person. That I can guarantee you. Maybe even a wealthier person that I cannot guarantee you. But but at least you'll be a happier person. That I can tell you.
Very good. So if I may, I'd like to ask some questions from the audience. I've collected a few from the Q&A box, and there's a couple of questions on the same theme, which is, um, what segments do you see uh, as good potential for startups? Um, and some of the questions are asking about India specifically, globally. What do you see as areas that you find have good potential, or what would you tell people to look for when trying to find an area of good potential?
Um, you know, we talked about how every area has some kind of a digital disruption today. Of course, we can talk about areas. We can say, look, gaming, virtual entertainment, metaverse, NFTs, these kind of things are all emerging and rapidly growing. Web 3.0 rapidly growing. You know, health tech is changing, education is changing. But I think it's less important uh, to think about some big theme. I think it's more important to think about what are areas that you have expertise and you have specific interest in, and you will be able to craft opportunity in those areas regardless. I look at every day so many entrepreneurs that sort of take something that is traditional and somehow they are able to transform it into something else because they have a new insight on what that needs to be able to disrupt, right? So, as much as it's important to think about what are the big emerging areas, it's also important to think about where is disruption happening and how to um, uh, uh, translate that into opportunity for yourself.
Excellent. We have a question from Nicholas, and again, it reflects a couple of other questions. How do you think your leadership style has evolved during the pandemic?
My personal leadership style?
Yeah.
Um, I think the pandemic has humbled all of us in more than one way to know that no matter who you are, uh, you don't control uh, predictability of life. Okay. And so, one is, like I said, to create more meaningful relationships, even as a leader. I mean, I'm not just talking that as a person, but even as a leader, and be more, how should I say, compassionate, if you will. And I know it's one of those words that's overused, but I think if we didn't come out of this pandemic, learning how to really watch out for each other. So I think resilience and empathy to be inclusive of people, and that pays out tenfold if you are truly genuine about it, right? So I think organizations should take that into account and consideration, and build work relationships based more on trust as the center. And sometimes organizations build relationships with trust deficit, right? I think a leadership that's based on trust at its core and self accountability at its core. I think those are some just thoughts. But I also think pandemic made me a better learner, better reader, and just because there was so many things new to learn, and I think it's a habit not to drop. But it also has, I think, what should I say, a lesser quality that is just so much time on devices that I think the silent time to of thinking time has been, unless you plan it and really value it, becomes a problem. And I think leadership is not just about action, and many times we sort of just want to just do something, right? Otherwise we feel
Yes.
like we are not being a leader. And sometimes it's about not doing anything. And I think also, like I said, really having carving that time to think and be silent, I think, which is important. So, those are some broad thoughts.
Excellent. I'm going to ask one last question because that's all we have time for, and I apologize to everybody for that. But I have often seen, so Naranya asks, I've often seen that venture capitalists say they are investing in people. So once you're satisfied with the individual or the team that's running a company you're looking at, what are the second and third things that you look at when you're evaluating a company, potential investment?
Well, the second and third thing are not removed from the first thing. So when we say people, there is of course qualitative aspects of the people, but let's say it's a business idea that is in deep tech. So you're looking at what is really this person's core engineering prowess or kind of really ability to be that deep technologist, researcher, thinker to create? I mean, is there a fit? So when we say, they're investing in people, I think it's not just about are you a good person, right? So I think, are you a fit for the particular business that you say you are going to work on? And let's take the other extreme of something that's a very operationally intensive problem that you're trying to solve. You want to create Dunzo, let's say, and it has so many things that goes wrong just because it's people intensive business and operations intensive business, and delivering uh, customer satisfaction. Every interaction is a very complex problem, not a technology wise complex problem, but just a complex problem from a service industry perspective. It takes a certain personality to be able to do that. So I think there is also a certain founder fit for the problem that you look at when you evaluate. So, is there a large market opportunity? Is there a disruptive idea? And are you the right person for that opportunity, for that business? I think that is really the evaluation, and hence it is subjective. It's impossible to know if you are 100% right, but you are making decisions based on data you have at this moment in time, and what you can see. That person may be a different person 5 years from now or 5 months from now. That business may become a very different pivot 5 months from now, but here and now today is where you are evaluating.
Yeah. Excellent. That's a fantastic answer. I appreciate that. And like I said, that's all the time we have for questions. So what I'd like to do is basically say thank you, Vani, for being here and for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, your experience. Um, and I will hold on for a second, bring up our concluding slides. So here is a LinkedIn, and I will put that into the chat for you so that you can follow Vani on LinkedIn. Do that. Yeah. And again, thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. And we're going to finish with a poll, the audience. One more quick question about the things you want to learn to take your career to the next level. So I'll give you about 45 seconds to answer that. But what are the different areas that you think would round out your personal toolkit capabilities, and when do you want to get started on adding those? About 20 seconds to go. And close the poll in about 5 seconds. So the most popular answers are business and project management and data science, which are not surprising for this audience. Product management is also popular, and so is digital marketing. And it's encouraging that about half of the respondents said that they would like to get started right away. Right now is always a good time to start something. So with that, just make a note that we have another webinar coming up 1 week from today, which is in the machine learning space. If you are in AI and machine learning or know of people who are interested in that, this is a live demonstration of applying a particular machine learning model to a financial problem. And I'll put the link to that in the chat. But in the meantime, again, thank you, Vani. Thank you all for being here. And we invite you to keep in touch with us through our social media networks. Our handle is at Simplilearn on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And Vani, thank you for being here again. So we move into the chat.